At number 10 we have Throg. This guy deserves a spot on the list, mainly for the meme, but also because it's one of the iterations of Thor that doesn't take itself too seriously. For those who don't already know, this is obviously a trick played by Loki to humiliate his brother Thor. In Thor number 365, Throg makes his first appearance when Loki decides he wants to get a laugh out of his otherwise very serious and stoic brother. But this isn't the last time we see him. In an issue of What If that plays out if the X-Men stayed on Asgard, a Thorified version of Storm faces off against Throg for the glory of Asgard. Which is pretty bonkers. I mean, you know how what ifs can be, right? It's definitely a bizarre moment that's probably meant for a laugh more than anything else. But believe it or not, this still isn't the last time Throg makes an appearance. We see him yet again in Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers #1 in 2009 alongside other animal versions of the Avengers. I guess readers just couldn't get enough of the little guy. He must have been rated pretty well because he just keeps coming back. He's funny looking. At number 9 we have Ultimate Thor. Being a pretty controversial set of comics, the Ultimate series sets the stage for some fun new characters, as uncanny and overly dark as they can sometimes be. But Thor's variant in the series is anything but a miss. Originally dismissed by his teammates on the Ultimates as being crazy, this version of Thor unusually feels the need to prove himself to them in order to gain their trust and respect as the God of Thunder. He's got almost the same powers as the Earth 616 Thor, but he's rocking a different look that's pretty cool, and also a magical belt that he wears which seems to give him a boost of power. He also holds an axe instead of a hammer, which I just think is a pretty cool touch to have him stand out from his 616 counterpart. At number 8 we've got Thor 2099, where this world's Thor is actually a priest named Cecil McAdams, who is part of a religion devoted solely to the original Thor, who had lived 100 years before by this point. What's bizarre about this character is that he doesn't actually come by Thor's powers naturally. His abilities are granted to him by the CEO of the Alchemax Corporation, who has convinced him that he's a Norse god. It's actually a pretty dark reality playing out during the series, with most of the world being run by corporations and greedy multimillionaires. And on top of all that, genuine superheroes are pretty scarce during these times, unless they're created synthetically like McAdams is. Although it sounds like I'm basically just outing this guy as a fraud, he still means entirely well, and he's passionate about Norse mythology. What I find really cool about this character is that he's become a superhero through passion and obsession with the real Thor, which sort of turns him into a pretty genuinely powerful and motivated variant, especially since he fully believes he's the real deal.
Number 7. Spider UK. The first Spider-Man mashed with another Marvel hero. These mashups always make for powerful characters. Basically, Spider UK is William Braddock, hailing from Earth 833. If you haven't gathered from the Braddock namesake, Spider UK is what would happen if Spider-Man was Captain Britain. As such, he is part of the Captain Britain Corps, being introduced in the Edge of Spider-Verse Volume 1. He is also part of the Spider Army put together to take on the Inheritors, and a pretty important part of it, he was not only an amazing leader but also had a very useful dimension hopping ability. Unfortunately, this Spider-Man didn't actually have a spider sense, which is probably what allowed him to be de-lifed by an attack from behind in Spider-Geddon #1.
At number 6 is Iron Hammer. This is such a cool variant because he answers the question, what would happen if Thor and Iron Man combined their abilities into one hero? When Gamora manipulates the souls of the Marvel Universe and mixes them all together, she ends up creating a whole new world called Warp World. Sounds kind of fun, doesn't it? Sounds like the name of a crappy small town arcade, and we all know those are always the best ones. But it is far from that. It's actually a universe where every soul is combined with another within the Marvel Universe. This event basically creates a mixture of Thor and Iron Man, aka Stark Odinson, son of Howard Odin. Riveting bit of writing right there. Basically, this variant ends up with a pretty cool new look as well as a brand new set of capabilities that basically combine Iron Man's wit and intelligence with Thor's supreme godlike power. I mean, even if this was just Iron Man wielding Mjolnir, it would be cool enough, but part of Thor is still in there somewhere, which makes it even more insane to imagine how powerful this variant could be.
Number 5. Earth 666. First appearing in Secret Avengers number 33 in October 2012, this Black Widow is a member of the supernatural Avengers of Earth 666. Her exact supernatural status is unknown, but it was confirmed that all residents of that reality are either dead or undead in some way. And Natasha specifically, well, she appears to be part human and part actual real spider. I'm assuming it's a Black Widow, but ultimately she's a humanoid spider and presumably has all the benefits that come with that, including fangs, multiple eyes, a monstrous pair of hands and feet, and for that reason she winds up here as at least more powerful than a regular Black Widow. The hero, not the arachnid.
At number 4 we have Old King Thor. This version of the God of Thunder is basically an older, futuristic version of the 616 counterpart we're used to. Hailing from Earth 14412, this version of Thor is the All-Father and ruler of Asgard as we currently know Odin to be. His look is pretty intimidating, having a more advanced and seemingly fortified armor as well as only one eye. The eye is missing because similarly to his father, Odin, he too gave his eye in exchange for all the knowledge in the 9 realms. On top of all that, Old King Thor seems to have refined and perfected all of his abilities, meaning that it could be pretty easily argued that this version of Thor is in fact better than the original. In terms of power levels at least. And I think it's also always helpful for a hero to have more wisdom as well, which we can all safely say Old King Thor has in droves. I mean, just look at him. Although to be fair to Thor 616, it's sort of known that Old King Thor is just an older version of 616 Thor, even though he's from Earth 14412. Now, I'm not sure if Thor developed some ability to travel to other realities, but Old King Thor has suggested a few times before that if 616 Thor were to die, he would too. So there may not be any comparison since they're kind of the same dude. Just one is a lot older and arguably more badass looking.
Number 3. Spider-Hulk. The second Spider amalgam here. Spider-Man of the Immortal Hulk with Great Power story is granted the alter ego of the Hulk after Loki magically transferred the Gamma power to him. So it's Spider-Man's relative spider powers mixed with an unstoppable green monstrosity with the temperament of a toddler. It's actually really cool. Eventually, the power of the Hulk is switched back to Banner with the help of the Fantastic Four and Banner's own genius. It's a short little story that seems almost self-contained, but it's an insanely cool one, and a Spider-Hulk would be an incredibly powerful character if he were to show up again and had more time to hone his abilities and temper tantrums.
At number 2 we've got Thor L, which you could maybe guess is basically a combination of Superman and Thor. One interesting thing about this guy off the bat is that he's blue. This is because when the two characters merge, Superman is in his blue energy form, and this merge that I mentioned is referring to the Ultimate Access crossover from the 90s. During this series, Marvel and DC laid down their feud to give fans a really interesting look into a world where Marvel and DC characters have both merged. And what a great combination to see merged into one, Superman and Thor. This is almost an unfair marriage of abilities, which makes probably one of the most powerful Thors on this list, actually arguably the most powerful, that is, if the number 1 spot on the list wasn't a thing. I know his accolades might not be the most extensive given the extremely short run of the character. In fact, he only really exists for about half an issue, but I really don't think the character should be written off due to his brevity. This list is about the value of a character in relation to the original Thor we're used to, and just adding Superman to an already powerful and extremely impressive hero, there's no question that this one has a leg up on Thor 616. At number 1, we've got Old Phoenix King Thor, or King Phoenix God of Fire. And if you're already pretty sure what this variant is all about, you're probably right, because the name is pretty self-explanatory. He's Old King Thor, having been overtaken by the Phoenix Force. In 2018's Thor Volume 5 Issue 6, Thor is facing off against Dr. Doom in a distant future, when he also encounters a Phoenix-possessed Wolverine, who is basically a walking, flaming adamantium skeleton at that point. And only when Wolverine reaches to grab Thor's hammer does he basically explode and disappear and pass on the Phoenix Force to Mjolnir, which just leaves Old King Thor and Dr. Doom to face off. But this isn't any ordinary Dr. Doom, it's a Dr. Doom endowed with the powers of the Iron Fist, Starbrand, Doctor Strange, and Ghost Rider all in one. And with the prosperity of Earth on the line, Old King Thor knows that he has to act fast not to end up overpowered by his supercharged Dr. Doom variant. So he makes the bold move of grabbing the hammer and allowing himself to be overtaken by Phoenix Force. With Old King Thor being one of the most powerful versions on the list, this variant instantly becomes hands down the most powerful we've ever seen.
Number 10, House of M. Okay, so this alternate reality version of Natasha Romanoff isn't exactly more powerful than her regular self but she's the leader of the Soviet super soldiers, defending the island of Genosha against Magneto and his mutant uprising. Now she doesn't really show up for very long, not very long at all actually, but seeing this Black Widow leading a team consisting of the biggest Russian superheroes including Crimson Dynamo, Ursa Major, and Red Guardian is just awesome. Not to mention, assuming the Scarlet Witch gave Natasha what she wanted, this is her dream come true, which is just really interesting to think about. Hold up, you're a Black Widow fan, bro? Name 3 of her best comics in the comments below right now, bro. I bet you can. Number 9. Madame Natasha. Earth 15061, Uncanny Avengers Ultron Forever #1 in May of 2015 had Black Widow form the Avengers Initiative in the wake of Zero Day, which is an event during which Thanos invaded Earth and took the lives of roughly half of its heroes. The heroes who were left were mobilized by Natasha and managed to stop Thanos, taking him out through a combination of magic and science. Natasha's team expanded over the following years and continued operating 30 years into the future. We can assume she has the same abilities as Natasha normally possesses, but being the leader of a group of incredibly powerful heroes like Thor, King Hulk, Daniel Cage, Captain America, and Iron Mariner, she has got access to a large number of resources that just push her to another level that helped her and the other heroes to take down Thanos. Number 8. Black Widow 2099. Like most characters from the 2099 universe, Black Widow is also hella cool. This Black Widow is a woman named Tenaya, and she is a somewhat more literal Black Widow than other versions. Tenaya was a serial taker of lives, with her MO being that she would consume her prey after sleeping with them. For some ungodly reason, she is approached by Alchemax CEO Miguel Stone to become a member of their Avengers. She carries around 2 stingers and fangs as her main tools of the trade, and her costume also features a mask with numerous red eyes, like the actual Black Widow spider. I said she's awesome, but she is still very scary and a very interesting version of this character.
At number 7 is Thor, Herald of Galactus. This one doesn't need much explanation for those who already know the role of the Herald of Galactus, but basically Galactus is this enormous cosmic being that has an insatiable hunger for planets. So he goes around consuming them with absolutely zero remorse. But even a being as gigantic and powerful as Galactus needs some help to get his destructive work done. So he always has someone called a Herald that helps guide him through the cosmos and find the next planets for him to consume. In exchange, the Heralds are granted ownership over the power cosmic, which basically gives them a fraction of Galactus' power, which even a fraction is a ton if you know Galactus. With the power cosmic, the Herald is then able to travel at immeasurable speeds through the cosmos and harness almost limitless power in order to fulfill their duties. And at one point, Thor is chosen as the next Herald. His costume changes to something much darker and even cooler in some ways, and also if you imagine Thor's powers paired with the effects of the aforementioned power cosmic, then you can also imagine why this variant deserved a spot on this list in terms of power as well.
Number 6. The Red Cat. In the symbiote Spider-Man alien reality story, we get a reality where things transpired quite a bit differently, with Kraven the Hunter dressing like Jungle Jim, Hobgoblin is the Sorcerer Supreme, and rather than become a super spy, Natasha Romanoff became a jewel thief known as the Red Cat. Yes, like instead of Black Cat. She shares a romance with Spider-Man and seemingly has all Black Cat's abilities as well. The story itself focuses on Spider-Man and explores the Secret Wars era of Marvel Comics from 1985 when Peter Parker first got his black suit. But the Red Cat is absolutely a highlight of that story. Number 5. The Spider of Earth 15. There are a lot of characters who go by the Spider. But specifically, I'm talking about the one that's bonded with the Carnage symbiote who comes from Earth 15. The Spider of Earth 15 is a much more sadistic, sociopathic, red-headed version of Peter Parker, which is proven by the fact that he has been sentenced to a total of 67 life sentences in prison for the crimes he has committed. To make him just a bit more lovable, he has a sense of humor very much like that of Deadpool. The Spider was introduced in Exiles #12 and was a big part of the reality-conquering Weapons X team featured in it, being a sometimes leader of that team. As a Carnage-bonded sociopath, he was pretty powerful, but he was nonetheless sent to the afterlife by a blast from Firestar in Exiles number 44. Number 4. Spider-Woman. The Ultimate Universe is not exactly the greatest. It has its moments, but it's definitely a little divisive. One thing I think most people enjoy about it would be the version of Spider-Woman. Actually, most of Spider-Man related things are well liked in this universe, but we ain't talking about him. On Earth 1610, Jessica Drew is a clone of Peter Parker who becomes Spider-Woman, but after the original Black Widow in the Ultimate Universe, who was utterly horrible and rather evil, and the second Black Widow, Monica Change, Jessica became the third iteration of the character on 1610 with her Spider-Woman powers. Jessica as Black Widow forms the all-new Ultimates and begins living with her teammate and friend, Katie Pryde.
At number 3 is Jane Foster. This version of Thor has one of the most intriguing backstories on the list. Jane Foster is just an average mortal from Earth 616 who basically discovers that she's capable of lifting Mjolnir. The way this happens is that Jane gets a job as a nurse and befriends Thor, who is in his human form, resembling a rather frail doctor named Donald Blake, but eventually he reveals his true identity to Jane as well as confessing his love for her. She then becomes the first mortal that has ever been brought to Asgard, but when she's endowed with Asgardian powers, she becomes overwhelmed by the responsibilities, and so Odin deems her not ready for the task, sending her back to Earth and wiping her memory. But once again, years down the line, she reunites with Donald Blake, aka Thor, and they fall in love once again, but only after a pretty rocky reunion. She's then tragically diagnosed with cancer, the illness that killed her mother when she was only 9 years old. And fast forwarding a bit, Thor is battling on Earth's moon when he realizes that he has lost his ability to wield Mjolnir, and when the hammer begins to call to Jane, she soon learns that she is meant to become the new Thor. The hammer seeks her out telepathically and she travels to find it on the moon. When she successfully lifts it, she transforms into a powerful goddess. Well, she transforms into Thor, and her health immediately increases as well as her physical appearance. She then goes on to be a really powerful and impressive version of Thor and even sacrifices herself at one point for Asgard, but is revived by Odin for her heroism. This is just such a cool and satisfying story of a Thor finding her way, starting as a mortal and becoming one of the most powerful gods in the cosmos. And despite all the bad hands dealt to her by life too.
Number 2. Clairvoyant. Clairvoyant is actually the first Black Widow. Claire first appeared back in the golden age of comics in Mystic Comics number 4 in 1940. During World War II, many superheroes were drafted into the military, specifically in order to boost support in the United States. The real military hired Timely Comics, who would go on to become Marvel Comics, to create comic book heroes as propaganda to gain support in the war, and the Black Widow was one of many heroes, but clearly this isn't Natasha Romanoff. Clairvoyant, the first Black Widow, is among the most powerful magicians in the Marvel Universe. After Claire's passing, Satan brought her body to his realm and revived her as his supernaturally powered operative, the Black Widow, to perform as his personal assassin, taking down evil mortals so that he could draw strength from their souls. She would be integrated into the Marvel Universe proper in 2005 as part of the 12 miniseries. And in at number 1 is Worthy Black Widow. Black Widow from Earth 23223 in What If Age of Ultron number 3 in 2014 was a member of Colonel Fury's Defenders team stationed at Castle Doom in Latveria when they were invaded by an army of frost giants and other creatures who originated from Asgard. But then the Midgard serpent himself showed up. Thor mysteriously fell while fighting the serpent, and so, while the others used themselves as a distraction for the serpent, Natasha managed to pick up Mjolnir in her last moments and gain the powers of Thor. She defeated the world serpent Jormungand and all the other forces of Asgard, seeming to pass on in the battle. But Natasha was revealed to be alive when her planet was next invaded by Ultron 1320 from a parallel world. The alternate reality heroes fought Ultron and then ended up forming the Avengers Infinity. Number 10. Peter Parker of Earth 92100. You'd think the addition of extra arms for a Spider-Man would be an added benefit. When it happened to Peter in the 616 universe, he panicked and got rid of it with the DNA of Morbius. understandably. But on Earth 92100, Morbius did not live long enough to help Peter, being eaten by sharks of all things. And since no one else could, Peter kinda had to just deal with it. Turns out, during a fight with Doc Ock, after Peter embraced his extra appendages, they actually give him a distinct advantage. They actually grant him much more strength and agility, and using them, he is even able to save Gwen Stacy from her demise. Unfortunately, they don't really protect him from the inheritors. Spider Limbs here sacrifices himself to save Spider-Man 2099 and Lady Spider in Spider-Man 2099 Volume 2 Number 6 in 2014. Number 9. Spider Assassin. Do you know how effective Spider-Man would actually be if he was a little less moral but still a crime fighter? Pretty effective. And while we've seen a few different examples of this, I chose to pull from What If? Spider-Man vs. Wolverine number 1, where we are introduced to Spider Assassin. In his universe, with great power comes great responsibility and greater enemies, which led this Peter of Earth 8351 to leave New York to protect his family. He joined up with Wolverine, and likely because of this friendship, he is much less opposed to sending criminals to the afterlife. He's also almost always serious, not resorting to quips and jokes to cope with situations anymore, which is reflected in his costume, which is a much darker look, especially with those black eyes. I really dig it. His web shooters have also been shown to shoot black webs in some panels, and they also include firearms. He is an effective addition to the Spider Army when it was formed, and an extremely effective Spider-Man indeed. Number 8. Spider-Man. Alright, yeah. Nope, not a fan of this one. You ever seen those videos of people finding spider nests where it's literally a swarm of spiders? Yeah, okay, imagine that, but they're superpowered and come together to take on a human form. Now you've got the terrifying Spiders-Man, which, side note, that's a great name. In Spider-Geddon number 3 of 2018, we are introduced to a colony of radioactively powered spiders who consumed a high school boy by the name of Peter Parker when he fell into their enclosure at Horizon Labs. After consuming Peter, the spiders gained a sort of hive mind in Peter's image and began fighting crime in Cruel York of Earth 11580. Other than his usual Spider-Man powers and the benefits of being a swarm of spiders, the colony is also able to poison its victims with a bite, or, if they're hungry for power, devour them whole. And it's incredibly hard to actually de-life this guy, as even a single spider being alive means technically Spiders-Man is also still alive and can multiply to rebuild itself. Number 7. Ava Orlova. Ava Orlova, who first appeared in Mockingbird's S.H.I.E.L.D. 50th Anniversary number 1 in September of 2015, is the Red Widow in Marvel Comics. While not exactly an alternate version of Natasha, she is close yet different enough for me to feel like it's worth mentioning her. Natasha rescued Ava from the Russian mob as a child, and she now refers to her as her little sister, though there is no actual family connection, and despite the fact that Natasha never actually came back for her and kind of left her abandoned. Ava is a much more aggressive widow than Natasha is, rarely showing any of the discipline of the older spy, and using an advanced system of electrical powers which she channels through her weapons. I think she's really cool, but we haven't really seen too much of her yet, and hopefully that changes. Number 6. Spider-Man 2099. Probably one of the most loved characters on this list. The Spider-Man of Earth 928, Miguel O'Hara, or as he's better known, Spider-Man of the dystopian future of 2099. This version of Spider-Man has many similar abilities to 616 Peter Parker, but some that are not so similar. He has super speed, which is actually capable of somehow creating a decoy. His spider sense allows him to telepathically communicate with others. He has accelerated vision, he has retractable talons, and also has fangs that he can use to paralyze others. And he has the famously disgusting organic spider silk spinnerets on his wrists. He first appeared as a preview in Amazing Spider-Man number 365 in June of 1992, and in his own series in Spider-Man 2099 number 1 in September 1992, and he is a titanically awesome character.
At number 5 is Beta Ray Bill. This guy is a very aggressive but also very respectable Thor variant. He sort of just butts into Thor's life and takes his title without even so much as a conversation first. It's sort of funny actually. They start as rivals and quickly become friends when they realize they pretty much match each other's power levels almost identically. Basically, Beta Ray Bill is a champion from his own world of Corbin, and when it's tragically destroyed by Searcher, he is forced to go on a pilgrimage to find a new home with a group of his own kind. And guess where they end up? They end up in the Milky Way. But as he's entering Thor's airspace, Thor decides it's kind of his duty to go and check in on the caravan with no intention to do any harm, just to check. But Thor's motivations are totally misunderstood by Beta Ray Bill, and he decides to launch a counterattack, thinking Thor is approaching aggressively. They both fight, and the battle ends with actually a victory for Beta Ray Bill, who then promptly picks up Thor's hammer without issue. This comes as an absolute shock to Thor and everyone else, because this has otherwise been an extremely uncommon occurrence up to this point. Thankfully for Thor, Odin rules that instead of offering Mjolnir to Beta Ray Bill, he would instead craft a whole new weapon for the Corbinite called Stormbreaker. After all this is settled, Beta Ray Bill actually ends up becoming a friend of Thor's and even steps in for the God of Thunder when he's out of town or out of commission.
Number 4. Poison. From one symbiote to another. Every time that pesky Venom symbiote would try to merge with Peter Parker, he would only get halfway before Peter could repel him. Now, what happens if Peter Parker is defeated by Venom, who completely bonds with him? In the What If Spider-Man The Other story, after Peter is defeated by Morlun and cocoons himself under Brooklyn Bridge, he is offered the chance to be resurrected by the Spider-God. But instead of allowing this, he refuses and is ejected from his cocoon non-resurrected. Cut to Venom, who, being Spider-Man's crazy ex-girlfriend, senses what is happening and completely ditches his current host. He intercepts Peter's body and after months of struggling, fully bonds to Peter. Now, Peter has all the fully realized powers that come with being a symbiote, but he actually has stingers that are capable of piercing the skin of Luke Cage, which is pretty insane. Number 3. Widowmaker. What if Fantastic Four #1, coming out in December of 2005, takes place on Earth 717 in 1951? The Soviet Union sends its first manned mission to space. Natalia was one of the 4 astronauts involved. Now, all 4 of them were bathed in cosmic radiation and gained superhuman powers. In her case, Natalia gained the ability to manipulate electromagnetic energy, allowing her to fly by reversing the polarity of her body, and also making her able to discharge her energy in lethal doses. The 4 became the ultimate Federalist freedom fighters, or if you prefer, and I do not blame you whatsoever, you can just call them the Soviet Fantastic Four, because that's basically what they are. I'll accept that. With the US and what becomes Russia disputing over control of Cuba, the freedom fighters were tasked with facing the Avengers. Thankfully, Rudy and Richards chose to abort the mission when a teammate got wounded. The same Richards confronted his superiors in the KGB, and tired of his heroic talkbacky ways, the leaders ordered Natalia to terminate Richards. But she instead chose to take them down. Following the incident, the super agents took control of the Union and pursued the ideas of freedom and equality. Number 2. Ghost Spider. The last Spider-Man mashed up with other heroes, but nonetheless possibly one of the most powerful potential mashups. Also, in my opinion, the coolest looking one. Also, it appears that Uncle Ben leaving this plane of existence is actually a really good thing. See, on Earth 11638, Ben never loses his life to a mugger, and he helps train Peter with his powers and helping him form Parker Industries. Peter and Uncle Ben end up building a machine that allows Peter to lure alternate versions of Spider-Man to this reality where he absorbs their powers to increase his own. That kinda took a dark turn, didn't it? But when he tried to do this to the apparently most powerful Spider-Man from Earth 616, he is de-lifed and his soul is sent to hell, where, with the assistance of the Infernal Hulk, he is fused with the spirit of vengeance, becoming the Ghost Spider. If you know anything about Ghost Rider, you know how actually insanely powerful he is, even going toe-to-toe with Galactus at one point. So yeah, this Spider-Man / Ghost Rider guy is potentially extremely powerful. Number 1. Cosmic Spider-Man. There was a point in time when Peter Parker of Earth 616 absorbed the Enigma Force and became the most powerful version of Spider-Man we have ever seen, even capable of punching the Hulk into orbit. In the mainline continuity, he doesn't have it for very long, but on Earth 13, he kept the powers and became the hero Captain Universe. So, this Peter Parker has all the usual Spider-Man powers, but also now has cosmic awareness where he can sense things on a subatomic level and from crazy distances, He has energy manipulation, giving him energy blast and flight. He also used his abilities to manipulate matter, making his webs as strong as adamantium, or even changing their shape altogether. His universe became a safe haven for all the Spider-Men when the Inheritors were hunting them, because Captain Universe could defeat them, and his cosmic powers are gone when he leaves that dimension. Unfortunately, he is consumed by Solus, who used the life force basis of his powers against him in Amazing Spider-Man number 11 in 2014. He's still cool.